Welcome to the Shakopee City Council meeting for June 4th, 2024. We'll call the meeting to order. If you want to take the roll, please.
Councilmember Delaney.
Here.
Councilmember Whiting.
Here.
Councilmember Contreras. Councilmember Lara. Here. Mayor Lehman.
Here. Item number 2, if you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3, 3A, Special Presentation Fire Chief Badging Ceremony. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Mr. Mike Nelson, can you please come up? You can stand out in front, please. Welcome to the new era of Shakopee Fire. Mr. Nelson, who is about to be our new fire chief, comes to us through the South Metro Fire Department, where he has been in service from 2006 until, I believe, Sunday. He has prior service in Savage, Rochester, and South St. Paul, but most importantly, he used to be a street maintenance operator here at the city of Shakopee. Welcome home. Mr. Nelson brings with him leadership experience, knowledge of both full-time and part-time operations, and responsibility as a chief of training. Mike Nelson is the new face of Shakopee Fire. He is the leader that will continue our journey to be one of the best departments in our area, and he is our new fire chief. Lori, can you please assist us and swear in Mr. Nelson?
If you please raise your right hand. I, Mike Nelson,
I, Mike Nelson,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully
that I will faithfully
and impartially discharge
and impartially discharge
the duties of fire chief
the duties of fire chief
for the city of Shakopee.
for the city of Shakopee.
I pledge to carry out these duties
I pledge to carry out these duties
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability
and will honor and respect the mission,
and will honor and respect the mission,
goals, and policies
goals, and policies
of the Shakopee Fire Department.
of the Shakopee Fire Department.
I recognize the badge of my office
I recognize the badge of my office
as a symbol of public faith and trust.
as a symbol of public faith and trust.
I will serve the citizens of the city of Shakopee
I will serve the citizens of the city of Shakopee
with compassion,
with compassion,
dedication,
dedication,
honor,
honor,
and integrity,
and integrity,
and to uphold the laws and constitutions
and to uphold the law and Constitution
of the United States of America,
of the United States of America,
the state of Minnesota,
the state of Minnesota,
and the city of Shakopee.
and the city of Shakopee.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Would you like to pin the badge on?
My wife, Kari Nelson, and my
Join
daughter,
us.
Ella Lewandowski, and Haley Nelson, please.
Hey.
Congratulations, Chief, and I told you were going to have to make some comments.
Mayor, Council, I first and foremost would like to thank you for putting your trust in me and selecting me to lead this organization. I believe we have a very bright future, and I'm looking forward to the opportunities and challenges ahead. I think we're going to be an amazing organization. I'm very excited to see where we are in a few years from now. The same for Administrator Reynolds and Assistant Administrator. all the department heads, city employees that were part of this selection process, again, I thank you for selecting me for this position, putting your trust in me to lead this organization. I'm not at fault for most of the people here today. I only invited a small part of that section, so it's overwhelming to see everyone here today. To the firefighters, thank you. One thing I've learned in my short time here is that you are resilient, you're dedicated, you're passionate about this department, and you're excited to move forward as well. So I'm looking forward to working alongside of all of you. To our leadership team, I think they're spread out a little bit, but to Deputy Chief Simon, Deputy Chief Giddings, Fire Marshal Pitch Schneider, I'm proud that you're part of our leadership team. I have full faith in your abilities. Joe, in the future, I would like you to do all public speaking events. That would be great. I can't mention the fire department without mentioning Chief Scott. He did some amazing work over the past year. He put some excellent people in places, really led us down the right path, has set us on an excellent footing to move ahead. And I want to thank you again for all of your work. Our partners in the room, there are several of you here. Again, your support's overwhelming to me. I've had time to meet with some of you internally with the police department, externally with Alina and Metawakanton are both here, Scott County Sheriff's Office. I look forward to being a collaborative partner, someone that you can rely on as an organization and also come to support when you need it. I wouldn't be here without, South Metro guys see this. When I talk about people that mean something to me, it gets hard, but I wouldn't be here without all of you, so thank you. And my family, all of you over there. I'll tell you the rest at home, but thank you. Thanks again to all of you.
Thanks, Chief, and welcome aboard.
Yeah, let's get a picture of council. Cheers. Yep.
Let's crunch it if we can. 1, 2, 3, and one more. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Just a minute there. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate your support.
Yeah, thank you.
You're not staying for the financial report, I guess.
Missing out. They're missing.
Item number 4 is approval of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda from council or staff?
Nothing from staff, sir.
Sir,
Ms. Contreras?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Delaney. Any discussion on the motion? No. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Going to take just another minute here.
It's cool to see the turnout. It's pretty cool.
Clear it out if we just set the pages up.
Out there.
Okay, item number 5, consent business. Any changes to the consent agenda? Staff?
Nothing from staff, sir.
Mr. Lara?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Lara, second by Whiting. Before we do that, Mr. Reynolds, if you'd read the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, here are the consent agenda items for June 4th of 2024. 5A1 are the city council minutes. 5A2 approves an on-sale and Sunday liquor license for El Gallo Loco Restaurant LLC. 5A3 is our police and sergeant union contracts. 5B1 awards a contract for the CSAH 78 pedestrian underpass improvements at Zumbro Avenue. 5B2 awards a contract and approves a professional services agreement for the Canterbury Commons internal roadway improvements. 5C1 is a final plat of Highway Park 3rd Edition. 5C2 sets a public hearing for vacation of a segment of 4th Avenue West public right-of-way. 5C3 is the final plat of Countryside 3rd Edition. 5C4 is a replacement relocation of Lions Park Disc Golf Course and approval of contracts for concrete, Mando, and replacement baskets. 5C5 is an approval of a concept for Killarney Hills Park Development and contract with HTPO for construction documents. And 5D1 is a declaration of surplus property.
Question for staff. Did we get the memo addition for the 5D1 surplus property on the table? Yes, it was.
I think it was added to the public packet earlier today as well. It was added to the public packet today.
It's right there.
Yep.
Very good. We have a motion second. Any discussion on the motion?
No discussion.
In favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 6, recognition of residents by the City Council of an item not on the agenda. Anybody here for an item not on the agenda? County Commissioner Jody Brennan, representing most of Shakopee. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much, I believe.
Go
I'm
ahead and
on.
pull that forward. Not as sensitive as we'd like them to be sometimes.
Yeah, I didn't realize I was coming on such a historic day in Shakopee, so great to see that celebration. I'm just here to thank Administrator Reynolds, Mr. Kursky, and Mr. Sullivan for coming to the Scott County Commissioner Workshop today on economic development and tell us about the Innovation Hub. So I appreciate the work that the city is doing to promote and support economic development in our city and also our county. You know, I love partnerships and I love this city. So just being able to hear what's going on in Shakopee is just really important for all of us to hear. So that's all I have. So thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner?
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there anybody else that would like to address the City Council on an item not on the agenda? Seeing none. Item number 7, business removed from the consent agenda. We have none. Item number 8, recess for Economic Development Authority meeting. Motion would be in order, Mr. Whiting.
I'll make a motion to recess to the Economic Development Authority.
Is there a second? Discussion on the motion?
None.
Discussion, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are in recess. Madam President.
Thank you. I would like to call the Shakopee Economic Development meeting to order for June 4th, 2024. Staff, if you could please make note of the roll. Second on our agenda tonight is the approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as
We
presented.
have a motion. Do we have a second for that?
I'll second.
Second. Any discussion on that? Discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Number 3, you have consent business, and we have the EDA minutes. Yes, sir.
Madam President, I'll move the consent business.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second for that?
Second.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Discussion? Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Number 4, we have our We don't have anything on number 4, general business. On our number 5 reports, we just have our EDA bill list. Any questions on the EDA bill list?
No questions.
No questions. All right. Number 6, if we could have a motion.
Madam President, I will make a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024 at 7 p.m.
Thank you. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
All right. Any discussion on that? All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And we are done. Thank you. Great job. Thank you.
Okay, we'll reconvene the Shakopee City Council meeting and go to,
Should I join my partners out there in the audience, or I can watch it. I was going to join you, but I'll wait up here.
number 10A1, Minnesota Valley Transit Association presentation. And who is going to start us? How about if we have Councilor Whiting, who is our liaison, say a couple words first?
For that, I'd like to introduce Luther Widner here from the MVTA, our executive director, and he can join us with introductions of staff, and welcome.
Very much. Good evening, everyone. I thank you for having me. Is there a clicker, or you want to? I'll tell you when I want.
Pull that microphone closer to you.
I'm saying, is there a clicker, or do I do the? Should I work
Just
it?
to ask Mr. Kursky.
Just
in
tell him
advance,
next
I think.
slide, next slide.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I got
Good
this
evening.
down now. I want to thank everyone, obviously, for having me this evening. I will say it's interesting. When I was at Savage last month, there was a swearing of a new officer. So a young lady just joined the force, and that was really nice to see that. And then, coming here tonight, obviously, in the swearing, obviously, of new police chief. So I got to keep the streak running as I continue.
Luther, please don't be shy about pulling that microphone
Oh, you
toward
need a little
you.
louder? All right, I'll
There
try.
you go.
All right, there we
You're
go.
up there.
There we go. No one is scaring anybody. So, just take a brief moment to introduce some of my staff that's here today. Obviously supports me, obviously Minnesota Valley, as well as obviously the Shakopee. I have myself, I'm Luther Winder, Chief Executive Officer, been in Minnesota Valley since 2016. I have Matt Fighton, who is our Chief Development Officer. He is, you might know him from his time at Southwest, but now he's at Minnesota Valley. I think it's almost a year, a little over a year coming up now. In July will be a year. Actually, it's a year in April, but his review will be in July. And then we have Joya Stenson, who is our newest addition to the team. She is our planning and public outreach manager. She is going to focus on our partnerships as well as our community outreach and our development. I think she's already had some great meetings with city staff. She's helped me obviously prepare this presentation here, hopefully answering some of your questions. As we continue to go through anything that I don't cover or you want more information on, please reach out to me or Joya or Matt accordingly. Next slide, please. Just, I always like to start with the first slide, really giving what MVTA at a glance. Not everyone's always familiar with, obviously, the business that we do and kind of where we're at pre-pandemic and obviously here we are post-pandemic. We were founded in 1990. We offer, obviously, express service, which is obviously continues to be down, but recovering, local, reverse commute, and on-demand service. We're the second largest transit agency in the state of Minnesota. I like to say we go back and forth with Duluth. Sometimes Duluth, some is us, but it's been us, obviously, for the last 4 or 5 years. We have 171 buses. We have 23 to 24 routes. The 24th route is our seasonal for fun bus, which does quite a significant amount of service, obviously, in the Shakopee area. That serves our Canterbury. That also serves Mystic Lake Casino, which is outside in Prior Lake. It serves Valley Fair, Mall of America, and the Twin City Outlets. We have 7 parking rides and 7 stations and 2 bus garages. 1 bus garage in Eagan, another one in Burnsville. A little later on as far as ridership is concerned, to date we're about 1.2, almost 1.3 million rides. We're about 45% of where we were post-pandemic. That trends nationally, what we see also with the region, it's about a little bit over 50%. We continue to see we continue to grow service in certain areas, and obviously express service continues to be something that's coming back. Our goal for this year is to hit 1.6 million rides. That will get us over 50% of where we were, almost 6% where we were post-pandemic, and continue up from there. Next slide, please. First, I kind of want to start off with, before I get into our fixed route service, really, we have an onboard campaign right now really highlighting some of our riders. And rider I think I want to highlight today's meeting is Nick. Nick is actually a resident of Shakopee. He uses our service to go to U.S. Bank headquarters in downtown. He uses our express service. It's important to note that individuals do still use our express service. Like you say, use it multiple days a week. They do allow individuals to live in our suburban communities and to travel to work in downtown. If that service not available to him, he may not be able to live in this community. So it was important to kind of put face with names with the riders who utilize our services. And if you look at our Facebook page, as well as some of our social media, you'll start seeing more and more stories of our various riders that we're taking highlights of. Obviously, going out, meeting the public, obviously, and then doing snapshots of how they use service, what they want to see from our service, and how we can improve in service. And feel free to stop me at any time, too, if you have any questions. Just next slide for me, please. Oh, this is fine. Talking a little bit about some of the routes that serve Shakopee. So we do have a number of routes that serve Shakopee. Obviously, we have our express routes of 490 and 493, as you know. Nick utilizes our 4-Fun bus, which I touched on, as well as our Route 495. That route service started in 2017. That pre-pandemic, that's a service that goes from Mall of America to Burnsville Transit Station. It goes to Marshall Road and has branches that go to branches that go to Amazon as well as Mystic Lake Casino. I always like to highlight that route when I used to come out and speak, and I still do. Started in 2017, and pre-pandemic accounted for almost 5% of our total ridership. It's important to understand over 100,000 people are utilizing that route. Today, we're almost back to pre-pandemic level ridership on that route. It was very resilient because that's a route that deals with frontline workers that are going and servicing, obviously, the various manufacturing as well as hospitality locations you guys have in Shakopee and neighboring Prior Lake. And 2 local routes of 487 and 499. Next slide, please. A little bit when we get into a little bit of overall ridership, system ridership. So we like to compare, obviously, 2022 to 2023 because we want to always see an upward trend and trajectory, where express service is up 25% from last year, a couple years ago, as well as our local service up 22%. Overall, sister ridership, like I said before, is about 44% pre-pandemic levels. Ridership for this April has been up over 12% from 2023. So we're tending to continue to go up. When you look at just our routes here in Shakopee, we'd like to take a snapshot of where we're at as far as services and the places that we serve when I have the presentation. As you see, our route, our 490, our express service is growing 33%, as well as our 493, other express route, is up 5%. So you do continue to see that trend across the board as that increase, obviously, in our express ridership.
What's special about August, that August seems to be the month of use?
State Fair.
Stay fair.
Okay.
So I can also talk about, so as you guys hopefully seen a positive improvement last year, we also provide service to RenFest as well. As I think across the board, it's been very challenging. That service is very challenging. That event was very challenging, I think, for this particular area in the region. MVTA really worked hard last year with the consultant they brought in, obviously in league with Scott County, and provided additional bus service. We opened up many of our parking lots and increased service. What we heard across the board was it was better service overall. We're continuing to have discussions with RenFest actually right now to see what we can do to kind of improve upon that. But it was definitely a good model to show how public transit, or transit in general, can obviously alleviate, systemic transportation needs and congestion needs that you may have in a city or an area.
A great example of a winning partnership, and it wasn't all MVTA, obviously, but
No.
it was the group of them, but it solved the problem, and hopefully the Renaissance Festival can stay. So
Hopefully.
I've noticed improvements, county and you guys and everybody working together, so good job.
Very beneficial for us, and so we see ridership increases from that and continue to see upward of doing more service with them this year. We'll go to the next slide, Connect, some of the good news of the day. So everyone's aware, Connect is our microtransit service. It's our on-demand service that services individuals are able to book their service via an app. That service currently is available in 5 of the cities in which we run service in. It's important to note the Minnesota Valley, we actually operate service in 7 cities, Prior Lake and Shakopee being the two cities that we do not currently have our Connect service. Pleased to announce that we will be adding Connect service to Shakopee as well as Prior Lake later on this year, late 2024, early 2025. We're looking to expand and have 2 different zones. We'll have an eastern and a western zone. At that point, with Burnsville being the connection point between the 2. any questions on that?
Do you connect, is there still a station in Eden Prairie?
Yes, so there is a station, Southwest has service in Eden Prairie. They do run Connect service. They used to run Connect service into, dropping customers off into Shakopee, but they necessarily, and they've dropped them off to pick those customers up, but they didn't service their prime service for not residents who originated in.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, does MVTA, are we capable of taking your buses to their hubs and getting on their buses? I'm thinking of expanding the opportunities for the ridership through them.
Mall of America would be a great hub in Burnsville Transit Station.
Definitely. And that is something that Matt can also chime into, and if I don't communicate at all, that is something, there was connections a few years ago, pre-pandemic, that was tested. Now is that one-way prime service. Our hope is that once we do get our Connect service in, then we can build those connections accordingly. One thing, I don't want to speak for Southwest, but we do have kind of monthly meetings. They're obviously looking at their prime service and how they can have more local service in play. At one time, I don't know if you guys remember, there was a local route. There was some service that did come from Southwest into Shakopee that didn't do well. I'm not saying that's coming back, but both agencies are looking at how best we can serve our cities. And once we do have Connect here, there will definitely be opportunities for us to obviously to make those connections.
Luther, do you have a slide on suburban transit, the opt-outs, or do you want to talk about that now? Or?
I do have a slide a little bit at the end about the funding.
We'll wait, sure.
A bit about the future of Connect, because I do want to, I always like this slide though. One thing, we will be providing service obviously to the airport. We're looking obviously, started just this past Monday, we do take go-to cards. So what you see, we take go-to on our Connect service. We're looking at promo usage. One of the things that we do have the ability to do is provide either free or reduced transportation on our Connect based on a promo code for various events. Like you see right there, the vote here. We have the ability, we haven't done it in the past, but we can, and our agencies around us do that, where maybe you provide free service on days to go to the polls. You may offer discounted service or promo code for seniors to go shopping midday. We are looking at exploring that, but we're going to do that as we expand service to Prior Lake and Shakopee first. You guys have to be made whole, and then we'll make sure we look at how we'll get promo codes associated, but that's coming on the pipe. Talked about service expansion into the new things that hopefully our Commissioner Jay will see next month and hopefully vote yes for it, but if not, it's okay. We have one electric vehicles that we're looking to procure. We'll be talking about that's our EJS vehicles. We demoed one last year, did really well for us in the cold weather climate. They wanted to operate it in our climate with the coldest place that had ever been operated in. Did extremely well. And obviously, we're also looking at autonomous vehicle pilot as well. We did just get some information back. They do believe that as of right now, and things are subject to change, we haven't executed any agreements, the Shakopee looks very ripe for them as far as the road network to provide that pilot here in Shakopee. So those are the two board items we're moving next month to get approval for. Hopefully, with electric vehicles, we're going to, I don't yet have an ETA when we have those, but our goal for our autonomous vehicles would be in November, December timeline.
I think that electric bus did pretty well in the snow, too. And they did some
Very
testing
well.
with that, too. So.
And those autonomous vehicles, they're Toyota. Those are Toyota Sienna minivans. If anyone's familiar with Grand Rapids, they are actually running that autonomous pilot for the last couple of years up in Grand Rapids. Is doing extremely well. And we're looking to obviously expand that, here. And that's Grand Rapids, Minnesota.
Mayor, on the autonomous vehicles, how do they perform in the winter? Like if I'm sitting in the back seat and we're driving and we all know how the roads can get, what's going to keep it from rear-ending another vehicle or spinning out into traffic? I'm just curious, do you know?
Oh, definitely. So the good news is I won't be driving the vehicle. We'll start off there, but there will be.
Nobody will be.
I know you definitely don't want that. I have many talents, but that may not always be the best. But no, there'll be an attendant in those vehicles. So the goal is at this point, in the very beginning, they will have an attendant in those vehicles, and that attendant will take over control of the vehicle at any time in which either the road network is above 45 miles an hour, it may be inclement weather, there may be an obstacle, there will be someone there. The goal is, as they get data and feedback in certain areas, for it to be autonomous, but there will be an attendant. In the very first, it's a year pilot, potentially 2. We're looking to extend it. There will be an attendant, but our goal is, as technology improves, as it gets better, it will be fully autonomous. And in Grand Rapids, there are some routes in their downtown area that are fully autonomous, but we will have an attendant in our vehicles with autonomous capabilities.
But we might be looking for some test riders.
I'll come in a bubble suit.
It's a lot more polite than crash dummies, right?
There you go.
So just a little bit on the motor vehicle sales tax. I think a question was asked how we're funded, and not to spend a lot of time because this always gets very it's a lot. So one of the reasons that's prevented us obviously providing additional service in Shakopee really relates to how we were funded when it comes to motor vehicle sales tax. How we're funded currently, now there is a sales tax, and we'll get to that a little bit, if that's the next slide, I believe. That's a snapshot of what our 7 communities looked like in 2001. That's what our percentage is. So Shakopee receives a really small percentage of invest that comes into to come to us, because as you know, back in 2001, you weren't one of the fastest growing cities in the nation, obviously in Minnesota. So as your city has grown, we've received no additional invest funding to provide additional services. So what we've tried to do over the years, especially since I've been here since 2016, we've tried to reallocate based on where we see need. As you guys grow, we maybe pilot some other concepts in some other cities, and obviously expand service here. Now that we have the sales tax funding, we just have a one-time appropriation. We're hoping to get find out what our yearly allocation will be, so we can do some additional planning. We should have the ability to expand service in Shakopee, provide the services that we have not been able to provide to you for the last number of years, due to your growth and obviously limitations in the invest funding. Back to the legislative funding thing a little bit, just to get a snapshot of how it works right now. Just to do highlight that we are having some really positive conversations with the council about that sales tax allocation. We're hoping to get that allocation, start that conversation, I suppose it was June, this month, and to be determined. We did receive, in the transportation bill, we did receive some one-time funding, $2.3 million for some for vehicles, and that's where we're looking to purchase those electric vehicles with, as well as maybe, we also received $3.5 million for some capital costs. That's primarily going to our BBG Burnsville bus garage modernization, as well as some other state-of-the-art repair items that we have, but that's where the one-time funding came into play. Now we'll go to partnerships. We'll move this around. Talked a little bit already about the En-ROAD campaign. You met Nick already. You'll continue to see more stories about Nick and your community and all other 7 cities as we go throughout this campaign cycle. Partnerships. Just want to highlight some of our partnerships that we do have. Shakopee is always, I would say, this is one of the, when I first started in 2016, this was ground zero for me. I spent bulk of my time here. I came in April. And at that time, Amazon hadn't been built yet, and Mystic Lake Casino hadn't built their tower. So this big thing about, I think, there was that entertainment thing, Valley South with Canterbury, I can't think of the name, always escapes me. River South was talking about, how are we going to get our workers to, how are we going to get workers? We're already at 40, I think at that time it was like 40% understaffed, obviously, as far as, and Amazon wasn't here, and nor had Mystic Lake built that tower. So we really spent a lot of time, obviously, developing partnerships, obviously adding transportation where the 485 came into play, as well as obviously reaching out and working with Mystic Lake. We provide service on the 447, the 485 we talked about, and the 4 bus. We have a partnership, obviously, with Amazon, again, for the 485. It's important to note that both Mystic Lake and Amazon, they pay 100% of that connection. They, like I said, we provide the tree trunk, they provide the limbs. So as those services deviate from Marshall Road to the respective employers, those 2 private organizations, private businesses pay for those. And that's one of the first in this region. For obviously having a private employer, obviously a private business, actually investing in public transit, which is very beneficial not only to the city, but also I think to the community as a whole. And we've continued to have great discussions with Canterbury. That's growing. That's definitely growing. And we've had definitely some in-kind, but our goal for now is to continue to expand how we can actually put some better transit in, as well as maybe a little transit hub there, because we will definitely be seeing the next few years, we'll definitely be posting a lot more transit to Canterbury. Important to note, too, a feather in the hat for the city of Shakopee. The rodeo on July 20th, the Minnesota Public Transit Association will be hosting a rodeo at Canterbury. Minnesota Valley is the sponsor for, well, the host for that event, obviously is with the city of Shakopee. Look forward to having that, and the great thing about it is it'll be a rodeo, and at Canterbury, I'm understanding it'll be a rodeo that day too. So it'll be a bus rodeo followed by an actual rodeo. So I'm inviting everyone on July 20th, please, if you're in town, I'll send an email out. Please feel free to come out and visit. You will see bus drivers from all over the state, obviously doing, showcasing their skills and how they handle our cutaways and our bigger buses. You know what, Jay, I think I was wrong. You know what, you want that, let's talk about the suburban providers.
Yeah, so we're fairly familiar up here with the opt-out transit providers, but we also have a group, much like 169, or you might have heard of the I-35 Solutions. I want you to talk a little bit about the STA.
Great. So STA is made up of 4 suburban transit providers. The history with that is that back in the 90s, the 12 communities that are served in STA, 7 being the ones that Minnesota Valley has, Chanhassen, Chaska, and Eden Prairie for Southwest, Maple Grove, and Plymouth, respectively, for those weren't receiving their fair share of transit services, and they wanted to obviously to have more local control over how those agencies and public transit serve their communities. Thus is born those 4 agencies. Now, over the years, as you know, Minnesota Valley merged obviously with Shakopee, Blue Express and Shakopee, and so now we're down to 4. Essentially, our legislative agenda has been in the past, and it continues to be how we can continue to work with the council, but also get some autonomy so we can provide better service options. One being the long fight we've talked about for a number of years for Invest. We've seen communities grow. Shakopee, I know, a couple years ago with Shakopee. Now, if you talk about this year, it's Rosemont. It's one of the fastest growing. A lot of stuff's happening on the 42 corridor. Another city now that we're looking to try to expand some service to, and that's probably been our main objective, to just get more funds, obviously more funding, obviously in our respective agencies, so we can serve some of the growing needs that we continue to see. This year, I think last year was, like I said, it was a historic transportation bill. There was a lot of money in the region. It's important to note that there is more money, though, coming in as sales tax. I think over $575 million, I think is the estimate, than we receive from motor vehicle sales tax as a whole. So that's actually a larger pot of money in sales tax now than we actually receive in all of motor vehicle sales tax historically. That goes to Minnesota Valley Metro Transit accordingly. So there's a lot of funding there to do a lot of different things, and we just want to make sure that we receive that fair allocation, because we do want to expand. Off the top of my head, we obviously want Connect service here. We want to look at, obviously, some additional local service. We have some designs to have a bus garage, and we do not, right now, our bus service is really in garages are in Eagan and obviously in Burnsville. It doesn't really set us up well when we want to serve the growing Scott County. So we've always wanted, obviously, to ask for some, we actually have a grant in now to hopefully purchase some land so we can build another transit hub as well as a bus garage here. So there's a lot of different needs that we see in the agency to serve, obviously, this growing community, and we're hoping that sales tax and advocacy for that and getting our fair allocation of that is impetus for us finally realizing some of those plans that we have.
One of the things I've been thinking about over years, and we've talked about multiple councils, is, so walk us through how a rider at home gets on their computer, finds a bus to take them somewhere, but it doesn't actually get them to where they want to go, so they have to find a transfer, and that transfer might be to a different provider, Metro Transit. Mm-hmm. So is there one place they can go to do that, and it has all the different providers and the times and numbers so that they can make them transfers and plan out their trip? Mm-hmm. And where would they go to do that?
Great question. So Google Trip Planner has all that information.
What is it?
Google. So Google Maps. There's a transit icon there. When you type, that actually provides all the routes, as well as on the Metro Transit app. They also provide all of our routes, as well as the Minnesota Valley. But we use Google. We use the Google. Most of us use the Google Trip Planner built into our it's API built into our websites. Metro Transit has that, but they also have their own one they've engineered, which also has all the routes. It's important to note that we are is regional faring. So the go-to cards do work across the region. If a customer were to pay cash, they receive a 2-hour transfer pass that they can use on all services across. So customers do have the ability. It's for us. It's just like in a lot of cities, most cities, even in Chicago. I was just in Chicago, with Pace and Meta that are around it. There's always a suburban provider that has to provide the suburban service, because urban systems like Metro Trans do a great job of serving, an urban population. But when you're talking about for high ridership, when you're talking about more of a suburban, we're talking about coverage. Because now we're not just talking about. It's great to have that trip planner. We want to make sure a bus gets on your street, or at least you can walk to it, and in close proximity to pick you up. That's where we tend to excel, and why we're suburban providers. But we have to always make sure that we have the connectivity, because not everyone wants to stay always in suburbs, and vice versa. Especially with individuals from the core wanting to come to Shakopee. So that's where the trip planner comes into play, and the regional faring. We are upgrading across the board the fare boxes. Met Council just bought a new fare box that's been installed on some of the vehicles regionally. That's coming to Minnesota Valley. The plan is next few months, but customers do have that ability. But I would always say Google Transit is the best option. If not, the Metro Transit app also has that as well too.
Does the Metro Transit app or your own website have a link to that Google Trip Planner?
Yeah, if you go to our homepage, it's right there. It's the first thing, it's the most prominent thing on it. Hope it's so. And also on the app too. It's also on our app. You can also download the Minnesota Valley app. We have it as well too. We do, and what happens, the great thing about it is we all have different numbering schemes. So it'll definitely show, once you do that, it'll show we may be for maybe like the 490, but if you're transferring to it'll touch you it's a 535, or that they're still operating that Metro Transit vehicle, or if the Orange Line, if it's Metro. So it's all there for customers seamlessly, and the pass works for them.
Well, that's an improvement, because I remember, Jay goes back long enough with me where we had that conversation where that part wasn't there. So,
No, we've been even our own apps have been continuously being upgraded. One thing I want to say is, pre-COVID, Shakopee was more of a express service downtown bus service. Since then, we've had to make an adjustment and look more to that micro transit now, not necessarily in Shakopee yet, but in some of the other communities, and it's growing, and we're continuing to grow and adjust that as things go. So, anything else on that?
No, that's definitely, and it's important to note too. As we did make some modifications to Shakopee service in preparation to expand microtransit. One of the things about understanding for how ADA works and Metro Mobility, customers are only entitled to ADA services, Metro Mobility services, if they're 3/4 miles around a fixed route. That means the MVTA local routes. Anytime we remove a local route or modify a local route, those customers in the area lose their ADA eligibility. Now, the council does have other programs there for those customers to utilize, but it's not necessarily a guaranteed ride, the same right they would have as the ADA. That came to our attention with some of the modifications we made in Shakopee. We're actively looking to put some of that service back because we just want to make sure that we continue to have that conversation. Those customers still would receive a ride, but coming from I used to work in that space, and it's important to note that if a person has ADA mobility services, they have that because they're not able to ride fixed route service. That means they're not able to ride our local service. Our Microtransit Connect service is probably not the right service, may not be the right service for them either. That is their lifeline service. And there may be additional services to supplement that, but it's not the same right as what you have with ADA. So it's always important to note that when I talk about looking beyond the numbers of subsidy and fare box recovery, as we make those modifications, always note there's real life impact to people in their daily lives. So we are making, not say we can bring it all back because it may be financially prohibitive, but we're looking to bring back as much as possible and communicate. But if we do continue to see degradation in their service quality on some of those other services, we will definitely, that'll be the top of our priority, make sure we get those local services back to where they were pre.
I'm sure that service is pretty fluid. It changes quite a bit, too. Any other questions of Councilor Contreras?
Thank you. Quick question. So your Route 497, the one that runs here in downtown Shakopee, could you just tell us a little bit of like where our spots, just if someone's watching who is interested in, please?
Great. So our 497 and 499, they both traverse the Marshall Road, and then from Marshall Road they go to the Cub. From the Cub, they also traverse to out to Canterbury. Those are some of the main locations in which that route serves. You will find, I always get the hospital wrong, St. Francis Hospital, did I get it right? Thank you, because I always get them confused. St. Francis Hospital is another one. What we'll find is also, too, it's also near the Hy-Vee. There's also a stop near the Hy-Vee as well that was built. So what we try to do with those particular routes when they were designed and modified was we tried to keep them near food and pharmacies. So that's why you'll see the Cub, you'll see the Hy-Vee. We weren't, we do serve the Hy-Vee. Obviously, we're at Canterbury. The frequency has changed over the years. When first was like half an hour frequency, then went to hour frequency. Ryder justified obviously some modifications of that, which we're looking to kind of bring back. But those are some of the high levels. It's important to note as we transition from all our riders know, right now, we don't have very many stops. Like when you drive around Shakopee, you don't see a lot of MVTA bus signs, but you may see the bus. Right now, currently, until we make that modification, I always want to let customers know they can flag a bus down. We are flag stops, and like I say, we're one of the few places that still do that. We're moving on from flag stops to go to fixed stops, so in the future, you will see more bus stop signs out and more physical stops, and that has its benefits, and also it has its disadvantages. Customers that may have flagged one way may not be able to get to that point. That's why feedback's going to be very important to us. If we need to add stops, move stops, make some modifications there. But that's probably the big thing. If they see the bus, they are able to flag that down as existingly today.
Go ahead.
See, I didn't know that. That's something new I learned today. But I do have a question that I could.
They're moving away from that.
Oh, you're moving. Well,
it's still in place. We got, but it's still in place.
For now.
Timeline, but they can.
So this question formed in my head that made sense. So I don't know if it will come out making sense, but with Shakopee growing, we've been putting in a lot of apartment buildings, and not only apartment buildings, but senior housing. And we are going to have another senior housing building going up. Are you noticing more of ridership? I know one time when I was at the Benedictine facility, the residents there made comment about wishing they had a stop there to bring them to the pharmacy and Hy-Vee and all that stuff. Do you take into that feedback and kind of correlate routes?
We definitely do. Now, first, pre-pandemic, we were advocating. We actually had put a grant request in through a CIP request in Scott County to add a third local route to Shakopee. Then, obviously, everything got upended with the pandemic. There was a lot of growth. I think the microtransit will capture some of that. One of the things that we've always seen is that it's really important, but it's not going to capture everything. First, the microtransit, see where people are riding, and then hopefully then put in some additional fixed route service to serve those particular areas. But if there is, I don't think individuals always know, too, why it's love to have these conversations. Not taking too much time, though. I know you guys, I know like that. Customers always know they can actually call us and request stops. We do have, like Joy and her group, Joy's excellent at that, obviously. They go out a lot of times in the public and solicit that feedback, but customers can call our customer service number at any time and leave that on a voicemail. They can send an email also to us as well, too, and we do catalog that. One of the things that actually even comes up to my level is I ask to see rider requests. I like to see where riders say they want where the requests and they're going. Then I like to Matt and his group, that's Matt's side of the house, the development side, I like to try to find out have we been able to meet some of these needs there. So customers definitely have to let us know that they need that. But we do think the microtransit will capture a lot of that audience, but it may not be the best service. So that's why we still have those conversations. Customers want more fixed or flexible service, and that may be what we need to put in those areas too.
And that location, Councilor Lara, might, it raises the question, is it an abled rider or is it a disabled rider?
All right.
Yep. You probably have both at
the
same location.
Definitely.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Luther, and thank your team for coming tonight.
Mindy, we have Mindy too, our strategic manager as well.
Mindy came
too.
up and
Wait,
introduced
Yeah,
herself.
she did.
Thanks for coming.
Time we've all been waiting for, the
Right.
item 10A2, 2023 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. And get the slide presentation set up.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. Okay, like Mr. Reinhardt mentioned, my name is Bonnie Schwicker. I'm an audit partner with Abdo, and I'm going to go through the results of the 2023 financial statement audit. If you have any questions as we review the presentation, please feel free to stop me and we can go over questions as they come up. I'll also take questions at the end. I'm going to be running through our audit presentation, and I won't go into the detailed annual comprehensive report unless you have specific questions on it. We can go into that information. I'll run through our summary results here. I'm going to first touch on more of the technical audit opinion letters, and then we'll go through the general fund, some of the other governmental funds, the enterprise funds, and then we'll look at some of our key performance indicators in the back. Okay, so first about our audit opinion letters. We have two opinion letters within your financial statements, and they are both required by statute. And as a governmental entity, you have to have an audit completed in the state of Minnesota. And our first opinion letter is provide an unmodified opinion. It's consistent with what you've received in the past. And it expresses that we were able to obtain reasonable assurance that your financial statements are free of material misstatements. Essentially what that boils down to is that we did not find any issues during our audit. All of the balances that we looked at and the evidence that we collected was in good order, and the city was able to comply with all of our audit tests. So it was a really good audit, very thorough on the city side, very clean, good processes, good internal controls. We also...
Excuse me,
Yes.
what was your name?
Bonnie Schwicker.
Bonnie.
Yes.
Some of us that have been here a little while have heard the words material weakness or material, what was the other word? Material weakness or material deficiency.
It's unmodified.
Yep. Deficiency, yep.
And we have neither, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And could you explain to some of our newer members what like a material weakness might be or a deficiency might be?
I would love to do that. That sounds really fun, yes. Okay, so a material weakness is where, and I'll use an example to explain it. And so when we come into a city often that is unprepared for the audit, they provide us with what their balances are. And sometimes what happens is they fall behind in bank reconciliations. And we find that their cash balances don't match up with their accounting system to what the bank statement says. It's like you reconcile your checkbook at home, right? When that doesn't happen timely and in a consistent process at a city, it can lead to material differences within your accounting balances. And that is a material weakness within your accounting processes. We have to point that out in our audit report as a material weakness, because if someone looks at your audit report and they see that the city has $100,000 in cash, and we don't say, oh, but they didn't reconcile for 6 months of the year, or they were off, $20,000 at the end. If we don't report that as a material weakness, it can really mislead the bondholders and your residents. And so that's an example of a material weakness where there is such a significant problem that it poses a weakness to all of the financial information. A significant deficiency is not as severe. A significant deficiency is more when there is just maybe a lack of controls over a financial process, and that's more common in cities. You have a really robust finance department where the processes and the controls are taken really seriously, so you don't have to worry about not having enough people to handle cash balances. But in a smaller organization where there's one clerk or treasurer handling things, we have to disclose a significant deficiency to let the users know that there's not necessarily a problem, but there could be because there's not a lot of controls.
And just for the record and for council, the only time that I recall in 20-some years the deficiency was prior to the community center being expanded, and it was a internal. There wasn't enough.
Sure.
There wasn't
Yeah.
enough person to person when somebody came in and paid for a membership or a day's use or something like that, and we couldn't justify the expense of added staffing for
It
such
can
a
be
low
very
volume and
expensive.
stuff. And that was the only time that I recall.
And that actually was a long-term process, and what we figured out is that we didn't have to actually do staff to fix that. We fixed it through a process.
Yeah, I think we got some new software or something too.
Yeah, so that's why we're all clean, yay.
Sorry to prolong your presentation.
No, that's great. I don't get to talk about material weaknesses very often, so that's really fun. Our other opinion letter that we have is the Minnesota Legal Compliance Opinion Letter, and you have to comply with a lot of different state statutes. We get certain checklists from the Office of the State Auditor that we go through for different areas related to your financials and also your processes. And we did not find any issues as we were going through the prescribed testing by the Minnesota State Auditor's Office. So really clean year from a financial control aspect, also to a compliance aspect with Minnesota state statutes. And then for the general fund, I have a couple of slides that look at some historical trends. This first one is looking at your fund balance reserves. The city has a policy to maintain 35% to 50% in unassigned fund balance. And you can see that you've been able to do that for the past 4 years. There are some other categories of reserves that you have, some specific funds that you've set aside for different instances. So there is some assigned for the sand venture, public safety, and then also committed for building permits. And then looking at your general fund budget to actual results, your revenues had some really strong revenue variances. So you were over your revenue budget by about $6 million. There are two big factors for this. One is your investment earnings. Investment earnings were budgeted very conservatively. Those were over $2 million over budget. And then also your development activity. Development activity is also budgeted very conservatively. And so when you have strong years of development, you tend to have these really large budget variances because you don't always know what to expect. So within that $6 million budget variance, a big chunk of that is due to some administrative charges for services from development and also building permits.
That's the good side of the.
Right. Yep, exactly. And then there was because of that strong revenue, those strong revenue areas, you had the ability to transfer out about $4 million from the general fund for future capital purchases, and then also for some future early debt service payoffs. I have a couple of charts that just look at where your money is coming in from the general fund and then where your money is going out. And so this first one's looking at the revenues the last 3 years, so you can see how things change. Mostly consistent activity within the intergovernmental, that's different grants that come in. The large spike in 2021 was due to some COVID funds that were used in 2021. And then you can see in charges for services, there was an increase this year due to some of the administrative charges related to the development activity. The other category includes, it's mostly investment earnings, and so you can see that's where that one jumped up quite a bit from 2022. And then next is your general fund spending by type, and so this breaks down your large programs. The general fund is mostly operations. This is where your day-to-day activities take place, and so you can see that it was fairly consistent. Within the public safety, that's where your building inspection costs get paid out of. So when development goes up, your public safety, although it doesn't seem 100% related, that's where all of your building costs are when you're going out and making sure the development is happening correctly. And then you can see the transfers out there. You were able to do that large transfer out for future capital. I'm going to go over a few other funds of the city. So you have a separate set of funds called special revenue funds. Those are for these specific purposes that you can see here, and most of these balances are restricted. So when you're thinking about what you have for operations versus capital, versus here, you can see the largest chunk is your Economic Development Authority. These are restricted for these purposes, can't be used for anything else. The EDA, as you know, it increased this year due to some reserves that were put in for the River City Center. And so you have some transfers that went into the EDA that will be used on that project. You also received, at the very end of December, some public safety aid dollars, some one-time public safety aid from the state of Minnesota, and so that's in its own separate little fund and restricted for public safety uses in the next few years. And then you have quite a few capital project funds. When you have significant capital activity and tax increment districts, it's really important to keep them separated so you can track that activity. And you can see here all of the funds where you're tracking the capital and tax increment activity here. So the main one at the very top is that capital improvement fund, which received some transfers from the general fund to build up those reserve balances. And then here's just another look at your capital project funds on this chart that shows you how they can be used. So the restricted pot is for mostly the tax increment dollars. Assigned is a little bit more fluid in what you can pull from it. And so those are assigned by the city, and you can change what you use those funds for. The unassigned is mostly tax increment funds that will be recouped with future increment. And then you also have some internal service funds. This slide just shows what those changes look like. And so you're funding these from some of your other departments and building up reserves for these specific purposes. And then for debt service, the debt service that I'm showing here on this slide is really only debt that was issued as of December 31st of 2023. So it does not include any debt that you will issue in 2024. And there you can see at the bottom what your principal and interest requirements look like over the next 10 years. And this just illustrates that your debt service requirements are relatively straight across, and so not a lot of variability, but again, it only includes debt issued through 2023. And then I have a couple of slides to show you for some of your utility funds. And so for the sewer fund, it's helpful to understand how well are you covering your operating cost with the charges that are coming in. The top chart here shows that the operating receipts are able to cover the operating cost and build up, there's enough of a gap to help build up some reserves for capital needs. And we have on the bottom the cash balances over the last 4 years. And you can see there that you're able to hit the minimum target balance, which is 6 months of operating costs plus 10% of your depreciation to build up reserves for maintenance. Depreciation is thinking about how fast are our assets needing to be repaired. And then we also have the storm drainage fund, which you can see here, similar to the sewer fund, where you're able to cover your operating cost and build up some reserves for future projects. Storm capital is very expensive, and so in 1 year you could, wipe out a lot of this balance, and so it's important to have a really strong capital balance in your storm funds. One of my last charts before I get to some of the ratios that we have is looking at your total cash reserves that are available and breaking it down into where does the most of our cash live. And so the most of your cash right now is within the general fund, the internal service funds, and then also the capital project funds. And then a couple of charts here with some ratio information. What we've done the last few years is we've taken data from the Minnesota Office of the State Auditor for all of the cities in the state, broken it down into a couple of different averages. One is Class 2 cities, which is 20,000 to 100,000 in population, so a very wide range, but that is how you are categorized by the OSA. and then also cities within your county. We have that information for 2020 and 2021, which you also saw last year. Unfortunately, 2022 is not available yet. They'll be issuing that sometime in late June. I will send that over to your finance department when it's available, so they can share that with you. But here you can see what your trends are for the last 4 years for tax rate and then also taxes per capita. And then here again for debt per capita and then debt service expenditures. The debt service expenditures is helpful to think about how much are we spending towards debt funding versus operating and other one-time capital needs. And then we also have current expenditures per capita and then a capital expenditures per capita. The capital one is really interesting because you know the capital projects that are going on, but it's helpful to kind of think about, okay, when are we doing them? What are we really spending per resident? The current expenditure one you can see has been very consistent the last 4 years. And then last are all the members of your audit team whom were lucky enough to work with the city, so our information is there. I would love to take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Bonnie. The one thing I wanted to point out was on page 355, which is cash and investment balances by fund type. So the gray area, enterprise funds, but then if we go back and we talk about the sewer and storm, which are basically our enterprise funds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I want to make sure our newer folks that government accounting is kind of crazy, actually, understand that the differences between these various types of funds, enterprise funds, special revenue funds, CIF, capital improvement fund.
Right. Yes, and I can just go into a little bit of detail on that. So the enterprise funds are very specific in that they should support themselves. So those are the funds that most closely resemble a business and how you would think about them, where those charges need to pay for the operating and the capital and any debt that they take out. They don't have any debt right now, but if they ever did need to do that. The rest of the funds are supported by tax levy dollars, grants, and other specific restricted sources.
So for clarity for everybody, the enterprise funds, sewer, storm, you see that on your stormwater bill, your sewer bill, and that's where the revenue comes into the enterprise funds. And then that revenue in that fund is utilized just for that purpose because that's what you're collecting it for. And then the internal service fund, these are funds that we as a city have decided to set up internally to take away the peaks and valleys in our general tax levy when something big comes up. You know, we've got an equipment fund for, fire trucks, cop cars, dump trucks, plow trucks, things like that. And we have a building fund for roofs, HVAC systems, things like that go out when you least expect it. And if you're going to take these large purchases and put them onto the next year's levy, you're going to see a spike in the levy, and then the next year when you don't need that fire truck or $2 million fire truck or something, then it comes down and it goes up, and we're trying to, the goal is to keep it kind of steady so everybody knows what the expectation is instead of having peaks and valleys. Correct statement?
Exactly. That's a very good description of those funds, yep.
Any questions for?
Just a quick question. Park assets dropped from 2022 to 2023. Is there any reason for that decrease? Or?
I think that it was due to some of the capital purchases that were made out of that fund. I can't remember the exact project.
Hubert Park, maybe?
Mayor and Council, I would believe that would be Hubert Park was probably the predominant one. There's probably a couple other parks in there that we did a couple of playgrounds last year too. It's just not coming to the top of my head, but it would have been for obviously park playground replacement for the most part.
Existing park equipment.
It's expensive.
That's right. If you don't mind, I'll just make a couple of comments. So one thing we had to do this year, so we follow government accounting standards. We had to implement some new standards this year related to software technology, which ultimately probably had very minimal impact on our financial statements, but was actually a lot of work on our end. So I appreciate Bonnie and her staff's help for answering some questions related to that. So it's been very
easy to work with, and I appreciate the responsiveness to our questions. And then also Melissa Schlingman, who's our accounting manager, she put a lot of work into our audit, so just a special thanks to her, even though she probably will never hear this, but.
Mr. Reinhardt, I don't know who can answer this, but I was going to ask, because I read this audit, and it talks a lot about that SBIS or whatever.
SPIDAS.
Pardon me?
SPIDAS, yeah, the subscription-based information
Yes,
technology.
and this is our
arrangements.
first year, 23?
Yeah, so this would be the first year implementation, and it kind of depends on who you are. Some people call them SPIDAs, others call them SPIDAs, but so it stands for Service-Based Information Technology Arrangement. So it's basically your software agreements. So if you have any that you're required to basically maintain for longer than a year period, you've got to almost treat them as if they were like a prepaid software agreement. Probably a better way to describe that, but.
It's a financial software type stuff?
They basically are handled the same way as our leases, our capital leases, where we've got to actually show a schedule of here's what the future payments are for these, and then basically discount them to what the present value is. So it's a very convoluted way of just ensuring that, if we have software agreements that we're committed to for a long period of time, that they get addressed within the financial statements, which isn't necessarily a concern here at Shakopee, but obviously there's other agencies that had issues, and that's why that came about.
And I guess that my question more was along the lines of, has this helped us in your role, your department's role, and wherever else it's used within departments?
I think, as I'll go back to the first statement, I don't think it impacts your financial statements very much at all. So I think, there wasn't really anything missing that the user wasn't seeing. I did allow us to kind of go look at some of the agreements and see if there's any, duplication in place or any software that maybe, we're no longer using. But I don't think I don't think we had changed anything drastically from what we're doing. So if that answers your question.
Did you have a comment, Mr. Reynolds?
No, sir. It was a lot of work, not by me, but Nate and his crew and departments, because we essentially had to go and outline exactly what each software we were looking at was and how much it cost, but it doesn't really impact us at all.
And who made us do all that work?
The Governmental Accounting Standards Board, all of the governments in the country had to implement that.
Does the federal government utilize it?
They also had to implement that as well. And there was a report released recently about how much time and money it took governments to implement that specific standard, and the average was about $30,000. And I think the city of Portland maybe spent about $10 million implementing the recent standard. So
I'm just wondering if the feds were able to look at their debt per capita. Mr. Whiting?
No, I just want to thank Bob and your staff for all your time, and especially I want to thank the city staff for all the time they put in on this, and another clean audit, so thank you for that great work.
Thank you.
Looks like we have the cash to be able to pay you, so.
Well, thank you so much for working with us and for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
11A, City Bill List. Any questions on the bill list?
No questions.
Side you good over here, Councilor Delaney?
No
Nope.
question on the bill list.
Okay. Liaison reports. Which side did we start to last meeting?
Beginning of the month, I think we go this way.
I'll start. Really for liaison, just this weekend joined the rest of Shakopee and anyone else that traveled here for the food truck festival at Landing. It was good to see that it grew. They had music this year, and they expanded to a kids activity area, which looked very popular. So good to see that grow, and look forward to the fall one as well. So great to drive traffic, and I ran into Councilor Delaney on the way out, and they were on the way in. So good times.
Thank you, sir.
Mayor, I don't have anything for liaison, but I did attend the Smudging Space ribbon cutting at the high school. Very cool place for our Native students and families. And I didn't get a chance to go to the food truck festival, but I had my son go get me some egg rolls, so I was able to eat. That's it.
Not cheating efficiency, right? Thank you. Mr. Whiting?
Last week was the MVTA meeting. Pretty much had a full day on MVTA, so nothing much more to report than that. Other than that, nothing.
Very good. Mr. Delaney?
Okay, from the Select Commission report, there will be a joint meeting 18 June. I think it's our normal meeting night. Couple topics that will be covered will be AMI, PFAS, water treatment, gravel pit development, backflow prevention, EV charging stations, and 2023 year in review. And we will get hard copies this year before the meeting, so that should be actually a pretty good meeting. 169 Coalition. The date to submit the survey responses will be extended out to Thursday, 13 June. As of the initial date, we've gotten 7 surveys back: LeSueur County, Scott County, City of LeSueur, City of Shakopee, City of Mankato, Sand Creek Township, and Region 9 Development Commission. And as far as community outreach, did attend Chief Scott's retirement. The mayor was there and other staff members. That was a good event. Memorial Day service at VFW. The mayor gave remarks, which were pretty opening remarks. Also visited Fort Snelling with friends to visit, remember their family members. That we ran into a World War II veteran who actually served on a Patton, and that was really a unique experience. So, and I did attend the food truck festival, so that was it was a pretty good event. Nice weather and everything.
Oh,
so.
yeah, it was a great one there.
Very good, thank you. My liaison report, May 23rd, staff and I attended the interworking group. Some of the topics were the traffic light on 83 and Valley View? New one that's going on out there? I think it's probably done by now, almost.
Oh, it's done, yeah.
Three-way partnership with Scott County, Minnewacaton, and Shakopee. Good location. Other things we talked about was the ORF Recycling Center. It sounds like that, and it's not cast in stone yet, that this fall when leaves come down, if all goes well, and it's completed and stuff, we'll be using, Shakopee will be using the new site on 41 and that they're currently building. There was some discussion about how that would look when we get the free service on certain weekends and stuff, and they're still working through some of them details. Went around the room, everybody talked about their projects. A lot of projects going on between Prior Lake, Scott County, Shakopee, whether it's trails and roads and everything else. 27th, I was asked to speak at the Veterans Memorial Service in town. Good showing by Shakopee. Proud of Shakopee for that. 29th, I attended the FRA's Go Rail meeting. $22 billion allocated for passenger rail, $3 billion for crossing improvements. Well, further on into that meeting, I learned that improvements in their eyes is a closed crossing. And no, it doesn't include quiet zones, improvements for quiet zones, which was disappointing. May 30th, the leaders to our east had a meeting that invited me, and it was basically like the 35W corridor, talking about a passenger rail on existing CP infrastructure from Albert Lee to Minneapolis. Really not a Shakopee thing, so I basically just listened since I just got off one rail thing. Trying to see what we can do with our rail stuff, but none of this really applies to what we can do, but it doesn't hurt to listen and ask questions. 31st was the community center interim fire chief Scott retirement. Did attend that. Had a good time. Good coffee, by the way. January 1st, League of Minnesota City legislative update. Some of the things I got out of that, and there's a whole lot that happened this legislative session, but what they did pass was a 70% electrical use reduction in new housing starting in 28, I think it was. I could be wrong on that date. But, and you know me, a simple guy starts thinking about this. Okay, if you have a 100 amp service in Old Shakopee 200 amp service in a house, newer house. If it's a 70% reduction, that would get you, if you have a 100 amp service, that'd get you down to a 30 amp service. If you have a 200 amp service, that would get you down to about a 70 amp service. And I did ask the question, does that include or exclude if you wanted to build a new house with an electric vehicle charger in the garage? They don't have an answer for that one, but that charger is going to take up more than what the house would be supplied under that own rule. So this is going to make housing much more expensive from a legislator that wanted housing costs to come down. They also have in legislation for prevailing or union wage in low-income housing building construction. That also, if that now it's a requirement, is going to drive up the labor cost, which is already high. So you get the labor cost, the land
Typically paying
cost.
union wages already, though.
You got the labor cost, the land cost, and inflationary pressures too. So there's a lot working against them itself here. So we'll have to see how we can sort out everything else that happened at the legislative session. There's just a whole lot there to wrap your head around. Some of it doesn't affect us at all. Some of it has some effect, but
You kind of segue into another business I want to bring up, if
Okay.
you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
Out of the legislative, we heard rumors of the social district here in Shakopee. I heard the first through the chamber, and I don't know if any of you had those discussions with our legislator or anything on the side. I don't know where this was driven from, but the conversation wasn't had at this level.
No.
And to me, that is concerning that we're moving on legislation that we haven't even.
If I may,
1 minute, Mr. Reynolds. I actually had that same thought and concern, and my understanding is this is being pushed by others, and since it is approved by the state and allowed, it would still have to come to this body for us to determine if we wanted to do it.
Before I go, I will say that I was familiar with the Canterbury portion of it, but the downtown portion surprised me. So
that's because there's misinformation that was put out. There's never been an intent to do anything downtown with the social district. This has always been focused on the entertainment and the amphitheater. Some individuals want it to be downtown. I don't see how it could be workable downtown, frankly. It'd be extremely difficult, and policing it would have issues as well. But the problem is that the press didn't come to us, who were responsible for the legislation, and it was something that we talked about, was not the downtown, we talked about the amphitheater.
Right.
And unfortunately, the wrong information was put out, and I've spent a week talking to people and saying, no, that's not true, that's not what we're talking about.
But was that written into the legislation that it could be downtown?
It's going to be whatever you want.
Okay.
Right.
That's the key, but when we were discussing it initially, it was only about the amphitheater and around the entertainment district there. But all of that then has to, and I'm writing the ordinance now, but essentially what it is that it comes to you, and then you make a decision on what you want the outlines to be. I'm not going to recommend downtown. I don't see it as workable, but ultimately we bring the ordinance up, and you guys say, well, you know what, we want to do the downtown. Then we go back and we try to figure out how to make that happen. But so there was misinformation. I tried my best to correct it, and
I noticed that, so thank you for that.
Yeah, I don't know who started the lobbying effort on that. I know the chamber jumped in, and there's probably a bunch of other people outside of Shakopee in the totality of the state discussions. But I had the same thoughts, and when I saw that the legislation requires individual councils here everywhere to take the matter up, I mean, it's pretty boilerplate, actually.
yeah, all it really did was allow you to make a decision down the road.
Right.
Thank you. I do have a couple, sorry.
I was going along those same lines. So when that does come back to council, we get the pros and cons of including downtown or not including downtown as part of this decision?
I'm not planning on bringing downtown.
Well, I think the first step would be to understand how, looking at how something like that would work in a location, whether it's the amphitheater or Canterbury concert series or whatever, just pick a venue and try to figure out how it works there and then try to view it in a different venue. Because there are, I can sit here and think without
A lot of
even-
logistics involved.
There really is. And, I haven't put a lot of thought into it, but,
The issue about not bringing downtown is that was never part of what this was about. Okay. And that was nothing that this group had ever discussed before.
and I think in that legislation, there was certain specific cities, not Shakopee, that had specific ask as part of that bill for certain areas within their town other than Shakopee.
Stillwater will do their downtown, for
Right.
example, yeah. Because, I mean, it's Stillwater is more of a district in and of itself.
Right.
And the Canterbury piece is being built specifically in that kind of a mold as well. And it's all about allowing but controlling.
I get that, yeah.
Well, there's like the logistics from the policing to the trash and everything. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff, but I do have a couple other business if you.
Can I just make a comment real quick on the social districts? I know it came as a shock to us, but I think it's also a very happy surprise that it got completed, that Shakopee is going to be allowed to do that, because I think with the new Canterbury area, that's going to be very important for the vitality of that area. So whoever, I think you had mentioned like you didn't know who was really kind of pushing for it. I think it was kind of on the chamber kind of pushing that through, and then the representatives at the end, our elected officials, kind of pushed it forward as well.
Obviously, it was Stillwater pushing for it also.
Yep.
So there was other cities throughout the state that had their own special interest in on this, and what they basically passed was just a blanket saying, whoever wants to do this, the individual elected body can consider it.
Sure.
And from a state standpoint, that's just kind of the boilerplate.
So then now we can work it out amongst ourselves and how that's going to look.
It's
and,
not necessarily that Shakopee can do it. Any city in the state can do it.
No,
No.
no. It's Anoka who currently can do it. It's Stillwater and Shakopee.
A couple other, sorry,
go
any more
ahead.
on that?
No, I'm good.
Just a quick question. I know Sand Venture's moving along, and I don't know if we want to do it as a workshop for the council, or if I can just request a tour or something. I know I can do that, but if that's something that we could plan.
Yeah, we actually have been talking about another tour of sites, not as in-depth as we've done in the past, but we do have a handful of sites that we want to bring council to, and we're, what was the last, I was trying to remember what dates we were throwing around in July.
Last Tuesday in July.
Okay. Is that what, yeah, so we're working that out currently, but yes, we definitely want to do that. We also want to take a look at the underpass down at in the Jackson
78.
78, thank you, and a couple other areas that we've been working on, including the amphitheater. We're going to get a tour of the amphitheater.
You can see how our five shovels moved
That spot
everything.
is, yeah. And,
But we are working on that.
Well, thank you. The last comment I had was, and I talked to staff, Mr. Reynolds, on that. I did get my new Minnesota flag in today. They've been back ordered. And I know I've had some comments from citizens talking about city buildings and the
Where
new
did you
flags.
get those?
So I got it on Amazon, but it just came today, and this was ordered from me before I talked to you.
Yeah,
so.
because we were trying to get them and couldn't find them, so.
So, well, they might be in now.
Oh, you got them? Okay.
Citizens asking about when the city buildings will be getting those new flags, so I just wanted to bring that up and know that the staff is working on it.
Staff is working on it, yes. We've also been having trouble sourcing it, both in appropriate materials for being outside and being flown in
And
the
then the
weather, and then
size.
sizing as well, so.
Not that we all agree on the new flag, but it is our new flag.
Yes.
So we're going to accept it and
Yep,
move
we are
on.
working on it.
We could start a whole
Thank
other discussion on that.
We're not gonna-
Are we going to auction off the old ones? Because I'll bid on that.
Yeah, right now.
I'll start the bid at 100.
All right, we got our, Jim is twirling over here. So.
Yeah, does the city attorney want to step in on that?
We can donate it to a cause, maybe.
Obviously, we're paying you enough to have an opinion, right? All right. Any other business?
Good.
All right, where do we go from here, council? Mr. Whiting.
Mr. Lara has.
Ms. Lara?
Make a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, June 18th, 2024 at 7 p.m.
Is there a discussion on the motion, and does the clerk have the motion maker in second? Yes, discussion on the motion?
Thank you.
Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes, we are adjourned.